Category 2. Oh, look who I ran into, crowed coincidence. Please, flirted fate, this was meant to pipe the heck down or get a room. Joseph Gordon. Recurring interactions, such as people being asked for directions, being asked for a light, being asked for change, being asked to take a parcel in for a neighbour, being asked for help in any way, being asked for a lift, being offered a lift. These interactions are not irrelevant in the spiritual realm. Every interaction, matter how you handle it, is do you know the way? Being asked for directions to places which have meaning for me. There are a few stages of this process I've discovered throughout. First of all, you notice you're being asked for directions to places that you don't know, so you can't help. But people ask you anyway. Then there's being asked for directions to places you feel you should know, and afterwards you find out where the place was, so at least you learn something. You are reminded that you don't know everything and there is always something. Then there's being asked for directions by people whom you are just on their path. You are the person they need. You know the way. You are able to show them the way. Then there's being asked for directions by people who stop their journeys to speak to you. They pull over in their cars, despite this age of Google and SatNav, to ask for your help. And you do know the way and you are able to help. And then there's being asked for directions to a place which has deep meaning for you. You don't make the connection at the time, you just help the person in need of directions. And then there's being asked for directions to a place which has a deep meaning for you, a place where you have a significant memory from, or a coincidental name, and you have the presence of mind to share that information with the person asked. Being asked for directions to somewhere which has meaning or coincidence for you by a person who is on the same level of awareness that there is synchronicity happening right now in this moment of meeting, and you are able to have a chat with this person to uncover where the synchronicity is. So these are the stages of do you know the way and being asked for directions. And it's a sort of a spectrum, isn't it, of awareness. When people are asking us for directions, the outcomes can also be so very different, can't they? For instance, just to share an experience of being asked for directions, I also like to play with the universe by noticing birds and flying objects, things that can easily be guided by the wind onto my path. This of course includes balloons. I do love to see an unexpected balloon. For me, this has come in the form of blue balloons usually, but not always. I think this began after reading Pam Grout's book about flirting with the universe, E3 by Pam Grout, 2014. Pam asks her readers to test the universe. You know, try it, why not? See how many blue balloons you can conjure up. I put the idea out to the universe that I was going to manifest a blue balloon. Sure enough, that happened frequently. I took photos, I posted to Facebook, I documented my little experience with friends and family. Some of them thought I'd lost my mind, naturally. Some of them humoured me, and I persisted. I know that we are all in the middle of life experiences where we feel we are on our own, but really we're not alone. The universe has our back. There are huge, unseen forces we have at our disposal if only we can learn to tap into them. This is a great game to play with the universe, a way to test your own presence and sense of self-awareness. When I first noticed that I was always asked for directions, this is how the process unfolded for me. Sometimes I'm so wrapped up in my own thoughts, my own day-to-day business, that I forget the significance of the meeting, and as I walk away I think, I've done it again, never mind, there will always be another time. Being asked for directions in Westcliffe's story. So, back to my story of being asked for directions. I'm not digressing completely over the blue balloon, it is part of the backstory. There I was, walking along, admittedly with my headphones on, which does shut out the reality of noises in the real world. I am guilty of escaping into my own music-induced world. It makes the walk home quicker. I had a couple of miles to go, carrying heavy shopping bags. I noticed a woman walking towards me, carrying a blue balloon. A happy birthday. You are one balloon. I wasn't in the mood for a coincidence, frankly. I wanted to carry my shopping home. I was halfway home and carrying heavy bags a couple of miles is a bit like a gym workout, and I was on a roll. In full stride, I didn't want to stop. I could see she was going to talk to me, and clearly I was the person she'd chosen to ask for directions. I took my headphones out and tried a little smile. She asked me if I knew where Wilson Road was. She had been told it was closer to Southend train station by the person she was visiting, but Zane had told her Westcliff train station was closer to the road she was going to. The lady had jumped off a train, stopped too early, and then she had walked back up in the wrong direction. She had found herself amid deepest, darkest Westcliff. She was headed completely the wrong way. I redirected her. and walked alongside her because I was headed that way. We had a little chat about all the experiences in her life which had led her here from London. I was born there, and I worked there for years, travelling every day from Shoeburyness or Leigh or Chalkbar or Westcliff, depending on where I was living, into Fenchurch Street. We had a lovely chat, and I was able to drop her off at the door where she was going. There are 250,000 approximately people in this town of Southend-on-Sea, Essex. It always amazes me when I think of that statistic of how people meet each other and bump into each other. Coincidentally, it hardly seems probable. But this woman, who had been misdirected, found me to ask where Wilson Road was. Did I know Wilson Road? Well, not only did I used to live there, but it was where I was living when I gave birth to my only son in 1993. The road had huge significance for me. That sort of thing, the meaning the place has for the person being asked for directions, is almost just as important as the meaning for the person who's trying to find the way. I was in a place at the time where I was able to recognise this lady asking for my directions would also enjoy the coincidence. So I shared that this is where I used to live. We both laughed and really enjoyed the moment. A gift from the universe, not just a coincidence, but an appreciation of the wonders of the universe, bringing exactly the right people together at the right moment in time. Being asked if you know something, being asked for information, or when you're in a supermarket, people mistake you for someone who works there. Do you know where the eggs are? Of course, I've just bought some myself. I know exactly where they are. That sort of thing. Being asked for information about travel, buses, trains, planes and automobiles. Maybe this is something travellers of a certain age do. They check arrangements. They double check the information. They doubt themselves or doubt that they are looking at the right information. So they check with other humans. Maybe it's a thing we do. Or maybe humans can sense when another human has information they need. If you're the person who has the information, naturally other people sense this, and that is why they ask you. For the reason, it's a mystery how people can sense where to find information and knowledge. You're not wearing a sign, ask me anything, I usually have the answer, or ask me when the bus is coming, I know why the bus is late, and yet people insist on dragging information out of people who do have the information. With the being asked for directions situation, sometimes you are the person in need of help, and sometimes you are the person who can help. A little story, dear reader, one which is fresh in my mind about this subject. The reason this book is being published in 2023 is because I had collected my final coincidence story for this book. It happened in Amsterdam on a weekend trip I took to see Esther Hicks in person during a 2-day seminar about the law of attraction. I loved the experience. I will tell that story at the end of this book, but I had some lovely coincidences while I was travelling to Amsterdam. During my trip from the UK to Amsterdam, I found myself in need of directions. I wasn't worried or concerned, not really. I trusted the universe that everything would work out for me, and I would make it to the seminar at the right place at the right time. I know the worst that could happen is that I missed the seminar that I've been wanting to attend for 20 years. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I shall begin. The seminar dates had been set by Esther's team months in advance, if not years, long before the train companies in the UK had decided to go on strike. The seminar was due on the 12th and 13th of May 2023. Guess when the rail companies had decided to go on strike? 12th and 13th of May 2023. There were no trains due from Essex into London on the morning of my flight from London City Airport to Amsterdam. I chose to stay in a hotel in London the night before I was due to fly out. It meant travelling to London a night early, staying in the airport hotel just to make sure I was there for 6:30 a.m. As I walked from the tube to the hotel, sure which direction I should go in. It wasn't clear from Google Maps how to get out of the airport. Car park, taxi ranks, new roadways which have appeared near the airport. It just wasn't obvious, it was all very messy. I asked for directions from an airport security worker who just happened to be strolling past. Pointed me in the right direction through a footpath which wasn't obvious from where I was standing. It was camouflaged by greenery and an overgrown hedge. I headed off, relieved to have found someone who knew the way. As I walked along the directed path, a little black cat appeared out of nowhere and wrapped itself around my legs. Seeing that little black cat gave me a feeling of added security, that I was going to make my trip and find the way, and not only was everything going to be okay, but I had Spirit with me, ready to offer assistance whenever I needed it. Skip forward to arriving in Amsterdam. I had a plan. I had a pre-purchased ticket for local travel, local buses, trams and train using a printed ticket, and airport transfers using a QR code on an app. I paid in advance online before leaving the UK. Organised, planned, perfect, right? Well, not exactly. I hadn't allowed enough time for the airport transfer to all the way into central Amsterdam and another bus back out again to the venue. I also hadn't factored in the time we were delayed by heavy winds before we landed in Amsterdam. We were delayed about 45 minutes, which might still have allowed enough time if I'd known where I was going and where to get the bus. All these things take time. I also had another task to perform before getting on the airport transfer bus. I needed to queue up at a red van under the walkway near platform B17 to have my QR code activated. I found myself in a queue with no internet and a guy in the red van who wouldn't activate my QR code on my app unless it was online. While I was queuing, the young man asked me for directions. Yes, it happens to me even when I'm out of my area. I clearly give off an air of looking as though I know what I'm doing and I know where I'm going, like I know the way. And so people ask me the way. You know, this young guy turned out to be called Francesco, and he had an address on his phone which wasn't familiar to me. I apologised to him and told him that buying a ticket online was cheaper than buying a ticket at the van. It was half the price. I let him go in front of me in the queue while I tried to figure out how to get a signal on my phone. Weirdly, I did get a signal on my phone long enough for the van guy to be able to do whatever it was he needed to do to activate my app and hand me a paper card for travel on the local buses. I hadn't noticed where Francesco had gone. I waited in line for the bus to get out of the airport and into Amsterdam Central, and I use the term loosely. It was more of a pylon than a queue. I joined the scrum. The bus was packed. There was a spare seat that was covered up with a giant suitcase. The young lady saw me precariously clutching a pole, and she offered to move her suitcase for me. I was so fortunate to be able to squeeze into the smallest of gaps between the suitcase and the seat, and I plonked myself down, holding onto the suitcase for her to save it from rolling into other people. English wasn't her first language, and I thanked her. She showed me her phone and asked me for directions to get to a hotel. I spoke to her in English, and again tried to explain that I was a tourist and I could Google it for her if I had internet, which seemed like intermittent access at the airport. Looking closer at my phone, I realised my settings for roaming abroad had been set to off. No wonder I couldn't get Google Maps up. A bit of a mystery as to how I got a signal in front of the guy with the red van. While I was messing about with my phone settings, I noticed another lady watching me and looking at the person in need of directions. I asked her, in English, if she knew the way to the hotel on the young lady's phone. She spoke to the young lady in French, and they agreed she had to get off in a few stops. I had the idea that I was able to be the link between the woman who knew the way and the young woman who needed the information. It was my spidey senses that prompted me to put these two complete strangers together on a bus in the middle of Amsterdam. As we travelled through Amsterdam on the packed bus, it didn't pick up any more people. The bus was too full. The bus became increasingly empty as people reached their destinations. I genuinely had no idea where I was or where I needed to go. In my head, I was taking the long route to a central bus station where I was going to find a bus out again to the venue I had to be at in about half an hour. I had a sinking feeling that I wasn't going to make it. As I was sitting there looking at random names of bus stops on the information screen on the bus, I remembered a conversation I overheard in a queue at the airport. One young guy was talking to his friend about the importance of local knowledge, and I just caught the snippet of how they could shave half an hour off their journey by going a different way, and they were enjoying the importance of their local knowledge. As I was sitting on the bus, the idea came to me that there might need to be some sort of out-of-the-box thinking and a shortcut, or a cab. I wasn't sure. While I was pondering my next move, I saw Francesco showing his phone to a woman in a flowery dress who had been chatting to the bus driver. I think she was a local who was just taking a regular route. She was standing next to the driver and didn't seem to be laden down with suitcases, luggage or anything much. He was just there, apparently having a chat. The flowery dressed lady looked at Francesco's phone and wasn't sure whether he should be getting off the bus at this point. He was showing her the same address that he'd shown me, and she didn't seem to know how to get where we needed to go either. The flowery dressed lady told him that she thought he needed to get off the bus. I listened to their conversation intently, and I heard them mention the Gashouder, which is where I was heading. I jumped off the bus and strolled towards Francesco, who was standing with his girlfriend and flowery dress lady. Just as I was going to ask them if they were going to the Gashouder, another woman walking behind me spoke to them first. She asked them if they were looking for the house of Anne Frank. They said no. They all shook their heads at her, and she walked off. I said, the Gashouder? They all looked optimistically at me as if I was saying that I knew the way. They asked me, do you know the way? Again, I had to apologise. I said no. but I have a feeling we're within walking distance, or maybe we can share a cab. The seminar was due to start at 2 o'clock and it was about 1:30ish. Francesco's girlfriend whipped out her Google Maps and voila, we were 2 kilometres away. We all agreed to walk. We had a chat and a laugh, and I entertained the young couple, i.e. distracting them with chat so I could keep up with their speedy pace. One of my distractions was to chat about the law of attraction. Naturally, they were both on board. We all have that in common. And I mentioned the black cat I'd seen in the UK, and I'd asked for directions. Francesco's girlfriend asked me if I had just seen that black cat we had just walked past. I asked her if she was joking, and she said no. She thought I was telling the black cat story because I'd noticed the black cat sitting in a shop window. She had noticed the cat, and then I started telling the story. We laughed, and I enjoyed the coincidence. This young couple were so very kind to me, slowing their pace to help me get to the venue with them. Dear Francesco and girlfriend, my apologies, I've forgotten your name. If you ever read this, know you were used by Source that day to help me. I'm sorry that you found yourself off the beaten track, but I'm pretty sure that you were put on my path to be able to help me. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time out of your race to the seminar to help someone else. Another funny thing about this story is that Francesco's girlfriend was telling me that he often goes the long way and takes a detour, the most interesting scenic route. She has spent 20 years knowing that he does this, and she has learnt not to listen to his hunches of finding himself off the beaten track. As we walked through the bicycle-strewn back streets of Amsterdam, taking as many shortcuts as Google would allow, we did have a laugh about the idea that we were all on the wrong bus, the long-winded route, so we could meet up and they could help me make it to the venue on time. I was reminded that when Francesco was listening to his impulses and hunches, there's more going on than we can see with our eyes. There is always a higher intelligence at work, an emotional intelligence, a spiritual intelligence. Thank you, Francesco. Your kindness meant a lot. Do you have the time? When was the last time someone asked you for the time? In this age of the mobile phone, there are still people who don't know the time, and they will find you because you do know what time it is. I don't wear a watch. I lose them. I take them off to wash my hands and leave them in random restrooms. I don't wear a watch, and yet people ask me if I know what the time is. But the question, do you have the time, is a really good question. Whenever someone asks me for the time, I do wear a watch now because it has access to my phone messages, and just as I'm talking about my messages, I've got a phone message. I've got a message from someone I've got to have a look at on my computer. This is why none of us have the time, because we're always pulled in 10 different directions, aren't we? But the question, do you have the time, is a really good question. Whenever someone asks me for the time, I'm pulled into the present. I take it as a sign from spirit, a nudge, that now is the time. Whatever it is that you want to do, get it done. Do not procrastinate. You never know when you're not going to have the time. Life happens, stuff happens. If you have an idea that you're going to do something, start today. Even if it's just opening a document on your computer and setting out a list of things you're going to do. The only time any of us have is now. And as I'm writing this book, I was asked the time today. Since cell phones have time on their screens, it is becoming an ever more unusual request. Apart from acting as a reminder of the time and how short life is, it can also act as a coincidental number. Once you've learnt to interpret life events against the backdrop of coincidence, you'll start to notice at what time of day you are asked to check your watch. Today I was asked at 3:21. Also a recurring number at various times in my life, a reminder of a countdown. The clock is ticking. Present day, writing this book, walking round the block to notch up some daily steps with my adult son, now 30. He was approached by 2 youngsters asking for the time. I kid you not, what are the chances? Currently mobile phones have time on them. People just don't need to ask the time anymore. Both my son and I found it strange. My son tends to roll his eyes whenever I mention any deeper meanings to these events. To my mind, being asked for the time is both A, a reminder that time is running out and I should get some projects finished, and B, the act of being asked the time is a spiritual event, a prompt for those people to speak with my son right in front of my eyes. I was walking behind him as we were single file on a narrow pavement, just as I'm writing this paragraph in my book. Mistaken identity, or being called by a different name. I hesitate to use the word wrong, the wrong name, because obviously if it isn't your name, it is the wrong name. However, I don't believe you've been called the wrong name by accident. For some reason, the universe wants to remind you of a different person, the person whose name you have been called, or the person doing the misnaming is being reminded of someone, often a person who's passed over to spirit, someone who's dead. For some reason, the universe wants to remind you. Next time you notice this happening to you, really try and pay attention to that next step. The step of remembering a person with that name, or contacting someone you know who is still on the planet. We fancy seeing you here. Bumping into someone you know, even when you are miles away from home, is another occurrence which leaves the people involved often scratching their heads in amazement and wonder. Bumping into a friend in Canada story. I had this experience in Canada. When I was 22, I ventured off to Canada to experience what I could. A friend group had the opportunity to visit someone who'd gone to live there. I wasn't the only person who went out to visit this person. A small group of friends had gone before me. I was travelling with my flatmate and her boyfriend. There were 3 of us. Not much to worry about, but travelling on a wing and a prayer. We had the confidence and fearlessness of youth on our side, and we found ourselves walking through the main street of a small town in Canada. One of our friends had been there for a few weeks already, but it was still a surprise to see him sitting on a wall outside of. Someone else I know travelled from Essex to Paris, France, to visit the Eiffel Tower. As he was walking up the steps, he noticed a familiar face in the crowd coming down the steps. It was his cousin, who was also there on a school trip from a completely different school. To my way of thinking, that is even more of a surprising event, since it wasn't expected in any way from either party.